say your name and your book and tell me what it's about, just like you did over there.
Yes. My name is Dr. Mauvareen Beverley. I am the founder of Mauvareen Beverley, MD, Patient Engagement and Cultural Competence Specialist. And my book is entitled 9 Simple Solutions to Achieve Health Equity, a guide for healthcare professionals and patients. And the reason why I wrote this book is after speaking to over 1,000 patients of all ethnicity, race, nationality, and I came to the concept of the common thread, the human experience. And what do I mean by that? Regardless of who you are, everybody in this room, we don't know each other, whether or not, wherever you come from, it doesn't matter. What is the common thread? So the common thread is that once accurately diagnosed, there is no human being on planet Earth could give it back. The billionaire can't say, I'll give you $1 million to take the cancer back. Oh, that's not enough, I'll give you $5 million. Regardless of whether you're homeless or regardless you're a billionaire, the common thread. And maybe health system, if they understand that, could be more compassionate and less judgmental. And recognize the bulk of us taking care of patients never laid in a hospital bed, and those that do are women delivering life. And in some cases, patients are trying to prevent death. And just to follow up on that concept, I wrote the book is when I refer to as stop in my tracks moments that led to boots on the ground simple solution. So when you develop an innovative process and you think you're ready to implement, and I had these moments. And one of them was with a patient with sickle cell. And everybody said, I created the concept of the bridge team. Bridge the gap. Whatever the gap is, I don't care. Bridge the gap. So in Queens, the most vulnerable population were patients with sickle cell. So we went to see her in the morning, Monday morning, 9 o'clock. These stop in my tracks moment always happens Monday morning, 9 o'clock. And everybody says she's so attitudinal, disrespectful, always in the emergency room, drug seeking. And so we're about to enter her room, and she did this. I'm on my phone. So I said, okay, that's what the team said. You see, that's what we mean she's attitudinal. And I'm thinking, what 18-year-old is not attitudinal without a life-threatening condition? Give her the benefit of the doubt. And I literally was about to enter her room when she got off the phone, and I remember putting my foot forward. She said, if you have a cure, come in. If you don't, keep walking. And I said, oh, wow. So then I became the child and she became the adult. Why do I say that? She said, did you hear what I said? I'm going to repeat myself one more time. Isn't that what we tell our children when they're not following direction? If you have a cure, come in. If you don't, keep walking. And I said, I don't have a cure, but let me think about what you said, and I'll come back and see you at 5 in the evening. Who this individual was in the morning was who the system created. Who she was at 5 o'clock was a different, this is the actual person. Very intellectual, very thoughtful, and we had a conversation. And I said, tell me about your family. And this is 18. At 16, her mom got off the bus from work, developed chest pain and died of a heart attack, taken to a hospital. Her sister had sickle cell crisis and sepsis and passed at a hospital. She now is 18 and lives with her uncle, who is, from the way she describes him, is a food, clothing, and shelter type of guy. And she said another powerful statement. You doctors don't teach me about sickle cell teaches me. And I said, have you ever been referred to a therapist, a psychologist? She said, no. Have you ever had depression screening? She said, no. And she was the stop in my tracks moment that caused me to go to the emergency room and say, we gotta fix this. And I created the first sickle cell support group. So when the patients were in the hospital, in the emergency room, the care managers who reported to me would ask if they want to join. And so we created a sickle cell support group. At lunch, we provided lunch, noon, and an hour before hematology clinic. And I tell you, when you heard their stories, it was humbling. And to recognize that, and it was unscripted, and I had a therapist there. And in the book, I mentioned that you heard the word hate. I hate a lot. And one patient, I hate my mom. I said, oh my God, how do you hate your mom? She said, oh, I don't hate her now. No, she loves me over the moon, but I never understood when I was younger why she would side with the doctors to keep me in so much pain. Why didn't they just let me die? And then another thing, my brother hates me. Why does your brother hate you? Because I suck up all the oxygen in the room. She has sickle cell, he does not. So he was on a basketball team that never went anywhere. All of a sudden now they make it to the semifinal. And guess what? At 1 a.m. in the morning, she had sickle cell crisis, and the mom and dad had to take her to the hospital, and he had to go to the game all by himself. And that's when I recognized for the black population, there's no family counseling offered. And these are human beings with a life-threatening condition, and no. So I created a process how patients should respond in the emergency room if they are not treated in my book. And I created a sickle cell transition from adolescence to adult. And the notion that there's no family counseling, it's just tragic. And that's one of the stop in my tracks moment. And the other one was with the elderly black population when I was in charge of the heart failure readmission prevention program. When Medicare said if you came back in 30 days, we'd only pay for one admission. Whereas prior to that, they would pay for 2, 4, 6, 8, any admission. So all institutions across the country, if for no other reason than finance, they had to create a heart failure prevention program, readmission prevention. And obviously heart failure is age-related, and most of the clients were between 60 and 92. And this was Brooklyn, what I call the merging of the African diaspora. So there was a large Caribbean population, a large African American population, and the Spanish population, interestingly, were from Panama. They weren't from Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, or Mexico. And under colonial rule, the British sent the English-speaking Caribbean to Panama to do what? Build the canal. That's why they have English and Spanish names. Ronaldo Austin, Antonio Martin, and phenotypically they look black. And 90% of the cohorts of the African American were from the Carolinas. And I had to look up that. Why is everybody from the Carolinas? Virginia is sort of down the street, and it's after the Emancipation Proclamation when blacks had their first representation in Congress, their community started to thrive. They built church, they built schools, they built businesses. The plantation owners' property went south because nobody was picking the cotton. And over the course of time, the Ku Klux Klan came in and burned the whole place down, and they came up the coastline to New York. So when we were in the part of the heart failure, I asked the team, find out who's Caribbean and who's African American from a cultural perspective. So we may be similar, but we want to make sure we understand the unique differences. So we went in to see a patient, and this is another stop in my tracks moment. And they always happen Monday morning, 9 o'clock. So we introduced ourselves, and I said, ask, where are you from? I said, where are you from? She said, South Carolina. So I said, my next question was, when did you come to New York? Are you visiting New York, or do you live here? Because the transition of care would be different if you're visiting and you got sick. You know what her statement was? My parents were a step away from slavery and my grandparents were slaves. Was I expecting that Monday morning, 9 o'clock? And I said, tell me about it. And she said, some of them spoke in codes. My family picked cotton on a plantation that was not ours. And I had to get up at the crack of dawn and pick 300 to 500 pounds of cotton and then walk 10 miles to a segregated school. And I'm saying, 10 miles? We can't even go 5 blocks without calling an Uber, I said, how do you go 10 miles? And her body language changed and everything. She said, well, if you want an education, you had to. Like, what part of this don't you get, stupid? So I said, did you have to walk back? And she said, no, the principal in the horse-drawn carriage had to take us, and we had to get back before dark, before the Ku Klux Klan. I said, how old were you? She said, 10 years old. Could you imagine? And that's when I realized that the population. But anyway, she continued her education, went to Voorhees College. It's a 2-year black college in South Carolina. And she came to New York in the 30s. And most people, before I say that, so this was 60 years later. Guess what her next statement was? I didn't get into my second try. She was still upset with herself, you know. Came to New York married. I'm sure you heard of Stuyvesant High School. Her 2 children were 2 of 5 black children to integrate Stuyvesant High School. And she continued, became a dietitian. And I said, do you mind telling me, when did you retire? She said, in 2000. Do you mind telling me how much you made? She said, $200 a week, but others made more. Read between the lines. And so these are the stories, and I realized that cultural competence does not apply to the black population, particularly the elderly black population. And when you think of all the atrocities that they have endured, and my team was committed to making sure we understood from a cultural perspective and from a human perspective, and listen, and never use negative language, because what's in my book, what's not covered in generally when you talk about health disparity, is negativity in the medical record. That's geared towards particularly African American male. So I'm sure you heard the word non-compliant, non-adherent, but how many times have you heard why? So we don't know why the person doesn't do anything. And these are the stop in my tracks moment. 60-year-old African American male recently diagnosed with congestive heart failure, returns 2 weeks later, heart failure decompensated due to non-compliance. So when that patient gets up to the unit, is anybody going to care? And one of the nurses who was not on my team said, oh, so you just got diagnosed with a life-threatening condition, you don't follow directions, I have other things to do. My team had to ask why. So why didn't you take your medicine? I can't take the water pill. Why can't you take the water pill? And please don't fall down when you hear his answer, because I drive the number 7 train. So, you know, what is your shift? 11 p.m. to 11 a.m. What do you do when you get home? I do chores, I make breakfast, but I take some of my medication, but if I'm going on my shift, I don't take the water pill. The same cardiologist who was ignoring me, and that's why I'm saying you could change culture, said, okay, take the water pill when you get home. Yeah, take the water pill when you get home, but beer may wake you up during the day, but by the time it gets to your shift, you'd have a less of a reason to urinate. But in the event that you do, we're going to give you a cubicle, so you could use in the private space when the train stops. Simple solution. Excellent. Let me just tell what the patient said. The patient said, if I knew I had to choose between peeing and breathing, I would have chosen breathing. And you don't want the patient to have to choose between his job and his health.
So where can people get your book?
You could get it on Amazon. There's a website, or you could go to my website, drbeverley.com, Beverley, BEVERLEY.com, and there's a link to purchase the book. And I just want to mention the book is a #1 bestseller on Amazon in the category of new book release, and #4 on Amazon bestseller for in the category of health.
Dr. Beverley.
Yes.
There she is. Oh, I can't wait.